What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another exciting episode of Let's Talk Comics, the official Image Comics podcast where we go one-on-one with your favorite creators to do, you guessed it, talk about comics. I'm your host, Jim Viscardi, and today we are welcoming the Grand Poobah himself, Mr. Robert Kirkman, back to the show to talk about a new ongoing series that he's got coming up in July, Terminal. Terminal is Robert Kirkman's quote-unquote return to superhero comics. This is a book that a lot of people have been, myself included, really excited for, because not only are you getting a book with Robert Kirkman, you're getting a book with Joe Casey, with Arthur Adams, with Andy Kubert, with David Finch, with Dave McCaig, with Rus Wooton. If you were to put together a superhero team of comic book talent for a book, this is the team you pulled together. Terminal is, as Robert describes, that it's big 90s X-Men feel back in comics, which is something that say what you will about about comics or whatever, like the big issue feel, big fight feel that I like to say in about comics. Like, you feel that here. I've read the first two issues, and boy oh boy, it's got everything that you could ever possibly want. In today's episode, we had to start talking about Invincible. The season 4 just ended, and so I wanted to get his thoughts on that, where he's at, and what it's like dealing with all that stuff. Because, like, look, Robert Kirkman's one of the busiest people in this business. He's spinning so many plates. He could be his own circus act. And so we talked about the end of Invincible season 4 and kind of like what it's like for him to deal with fan reaction on something like the end of a season, but also he's so deep into the next season of Invincible. How does he like reconcile that? That's it brought about a really cool conversation. The other stuff we kind of talk about is where certain surprises pop up in Invincible, where like a character like Machine Head is totally kind of coming into his own, and you can read his adventures and the stuff that he's getting up to in a book like Capes, and to see how Robert has kept everything so tight in a way that makes something like Invincible Versus work, where there's a new story in that game that ties into this whole world is really quite something. But then we get to talking about the Terminal stuff, which is this is a big book. It's got a big cast of characters. I don't know if you've seen the first two. Well, the first cover has 2 wraparound covers basically that you can put together to form one big image that has just a ton of cool new characters to take a look at, all designed by the artists on his team. And so hearing him talk about what it's like building a new superhero universe in 2026 versus what it was like when he was starting Invincible or doing some of his other stuff is really, really interesting, because I think Robert is so deliberate when it comes to when he decides to release a project. I think like Robert is one of the few creators who kind of has a bunch of different things cooking in various stages, and then turns the heat up a little bit to finish them off when he feels it's ready. Terminal is a book that I think by the time the first issue comes out, he will already have in the bank something like 18 issues. And so to see that it's so fully formed at this point now, he gets to kind of like go along for the ride with readers on what this is like, is really going to be a lot of fun. We talk about what it's like working with 3 bona fide legends, right? Art Adams, David Finch, Andy Kubert, bringing them to the table and pairing them with someone like McCaig, who he's worked with on a bunch of other things, is just a sight to behold. These guys are doing what they do best. And there's big moments. There are big surprising twists and turns. There's that patented Robert Kirkman gore, all that fun stuff. And then towards the end, we talk a little bit about there's going to be blind bags on Terminal, and so what the experience like for him is to as he keeps building these programs and changing it up a little bit and making them fun for readers. We talk about the wild run that Image Comics has had recently with books like Dork and Red Roots and White Sky and Exquisite Corpses coming to an end for its first season. There's no better time to be not only a comics fan, but an Image Comics fan. And you're getting books that only Image Comics can give you. So we talk about all that, plus a little bit. There's a little bit about Gambit's costume, which I think 90s comics fans will enjoy. So sit back, relax. You know what to do if you like this. If you want to support the show, make sure you leave a review on iTunes, leave a rating on Spotify. If you're ready, I'm ready. Let's talk comics. Robert, welcome back.
Hey, happy to be back. I am the least talented member of the Terminal creative team. It is a great place to be.
All right, I want to start with some Invincible stuff, and then we'll get into Terminal. I've got to ask,
man. You got to get those clicks. I get it. It's all good.
I said I need all of the clips. I need all of the clips I can make, Robert, so we can get more eyeballs on this. No, I got to ask, what's it like for you to finish a season of the show compared to, say, finishing an arc of the book?
I will say that both of them are similar in that when you finish an arc of the comic and when you finish a season of the show, the audience, I guess, notices some kind of a break, but the creative team does not. With comics, you're just diving into the next arc, and with the show, we are already moving on, and we're working on stuff simultaneously, and so there's no break. There's no nothing. Even in live action, there's hiatuses and you take a month or two off and then you go back into the writer's room, but the production on animation never stops. And so, it's a lot.
Well, so when you're seeing fans react to stuff that you've basically kind of wiped your hands from a month ago necessarily in a comic book.
I don't care what happens. I'm done with my work.
Done. That's it. I'm moving on. I'm doing other. I'm already working halfway through. When fans are reacting to that stuff, that especially things like an ending, right? Whether it's an end of an arc, end of a season, or whatever. What is it? Does it bring anything new to you reaction wise, or is it great, got him exactly where I wanted, now they can't wait, now they're not prepared for what's coming next?
It's a little bit of that. I think that it's certainly gratifying when you build a season to a moment. I mean, the season 4 finale is kind of a wild swing in that we didn't do a big action sequence. We didn't do an action sequence really at all. And it's a much more emotional finale. There's the scene with Mark and Eve that's very emotional. And then the conclusion with Thrag and the new status quo on Earth is a big change for the series. And, we felt that those events were so monumental that they should be the focus of the episode. And yeah, it's nice that, people enjoyed the season and, it's getting positive reviews, and it's definitely a relief because you do spend so many years on the season. But what's fun is there's real time for correction if people didn't like it. Season 5 is already pretty much done,
Sure.
So it's like, that's how it is. But yeah, and it's reassuring to kind of get further on your plan and have more feedback and kind of know all right, the long-term plans seem to be working and things are good. And it's also cathartic because a season of television is like a secret that you have with a cool group of buddies for a long time. And then when the season comes out, it's like, oh, finally, I don't have to keep that secret anymore. Oh, the Viltrum explosion is everybody knows about it. It's great. I don't have to hide this. So that's nice. It's a relief anytime a season is released.
Right. Obviously this season and with the show, you get to explore certain moments that from the comic that say maybe are expanded or a little bit different, things like that. Do those things come from old notes, or are those things that happen a bit more organically in the room?
I am capable of having new ideas.
No,
so that's nice.
For sure.
But so it's not, it's all just old notes.
Right. Well, I mean more like...
No, I mean, every now and then there's not really a lot of old notes that get incorporated. So I do have old things that I had planned that, this story could have gone longer. This could have led to this could have led to that. But a lot of that stuff wouldn't work if I were to put it in now because the path I chose kind of set us on a certain trajectory. But just sitting in the room with the writers, obviously, Simon Rasiopa, Helen Lay, Ross Strachey, they're all coming up with ideas and adding to the overview of the Invincible story in really great ways. Corey Walker sits in on some of our writers' room sessions and he gives notes and ideas, and he's really great. Ryan Otley, once or twice, has given a note on a script, I'll say. But for the most part, he's busy drawing comics. But a lot of it is literally just how can we plus this up because we now have motion and sound, and that leads us into a lot of different areas. And then we've changed some characters. There's certain aspects of Debbie's personality and, certain things where, she's gotten a lot more screen time in the show. So there's always like story going on with her, and that can change other things, and that can kind of spiral into different storylines. So that kind of organically emerges like as we're, adapting stories. And then there's things like Jeffrey Donovan does just, Jeffrey Donovan, Walton Goggins, Ben Schwartz as Shapesmith. Like there's these characters that emerge where we're like, oh, we have to do more of them because that portrayal is insane and memorable, and did not expect that. We're always sitting in the room going, how do we get more Machine Head in this show? We got to get more Machine Head in this show. How do we get longer stories with Machine Head? So if you're out there and you don't like Machine Head, sorry.
Well, it's interesting now because like now that you've got a character like Machine Head, right? Like really gaining a bit of popularity in the show. Obviously, he had got a big presence in Capes, and it's a place where Invincible fans not only can get a monthly comic fix from Battle Beast, but they can also get their fix from Capes. And Capes, for what it is lives more in the Invincible world, mainly because it's more just on Earth.
Yeah. Yeah, so now I like to say that if you're reading Battle Beast, you're getting the space part of the Invincible universe, and now by reading Capes, you get the Earth part of the Invincible universe. So while there isn't a, quote unquote Invincible title being published right now, there is, in a sense, 2 Invincible titles being published right now, which is pretty exciting.
We recently put up a post on social that showed basically for fans who may be reading along but not reading ahead, kind of where they are in the series. And issue 79 kind of is that midpoint-ish part of, the 3 compendiums sitting on top of one another. For you, what's it like knowing that you got that far, and what's it like knowing you have that much left?
Long road ahead, real tired. We'll see. It's still up to Prime Video if we get to finish this thing. I will say, things are looking good. The show does really well.
I got to imagine. I feel like they're pretty pot committed at this point.
Yeah. They're we're their number 1 animated show. They've said that publicly. They don't, it's the streaming world, so I don't get a lot of information. It's kind of frustrating, I'll say. But yeah, I mean, we're constantly charting at number 1 on their little chart that they do on their platform. And it's really great. So hopefully we'll get to tell that story. I would be just over the moon to be able to adapt the full run of Invincible in animated form. I think that there's just the back half of the series, there's just a tremendous opportunity for some like really cool stuff that I'm really excited to get to. But yeah, it's very gratifying to, be 4 seasons in. Especially, I feel like 2-3 short years ago, it was like the gap between season 1 and season 2, and everyone was like, this show's never going to complete. I'm going to be dust blowing in the wind before I get more Invincible. And now it's just like, too much Invincible. I've had too much. But we'll see.
The audience for this show...
I'll stop leaning into the camera.
You're good. The audience for this show keeps getting bigger. You see it in reactions and stuff online. You see it in more people who are buying and reading the book. It also exposes you maybe more to even more criticism. And like do you feel that extra added pressure now there are so many more people who are coming into the world of Invincible?
I definitely feel the added criticism as the audience grows, and I love it. Because I, very early in my career, learned that heavy criticism is a sign of success. In my early career, I did a bunch of books, Battle Pope, Super Patriot, Tech Jacket, like the early stuff that I did, great reviews. 100% positive reviews. And I would sit there. I mean, my early Captain America stuff, like, people like that, stuff that no one was reading. And, I would sit there and go, I don't understand why I'm not more popular. Why are these books not selling? I'm getting glowing reviews on everything that I do. This is crazy. And then I did a Walking Dead, and Walking Dead very much, early Invincible too, great reviews. And then Walking Dead hit and was very successful. Like by issue 7, sales were climbing. and started getting negative reviews. And I was like, wait a minute, what the hell is going on? Like, this is the first book that I have that has like a legitimate, like, successful trajectory, and sales are actually like booming, and people seem to hate it. This is weird. And that's when I realized you only get bad reviews when you're popular enough to reach people that may not actually enjoy what you're doing. So like when you're not selling, the only people that are buying it are the people that are like savvy enough to know, I will buy this because I know that I will like it. But when you hit a certain level of popularity, you've got people that are like, all right, well, I hear this is popular. Let me give it a shot. And they just don't enjoy it. And that's fine. You know, you don't have to win over everyone. You just have to get over, just get a lot of people. So yeah, when I see the negativity, it makes me cry for a little bit. And then I have to remind myself that, negative reviews means that you're reaching a larger audience.
Wait, I got to make a quick stop. The Invincible Versus just came out. Fans are loving it. It's a lot of fun. There's a new story that is in that game. You're introducing a new character who fans can find in
capes. Yeah, Elemental,
capes.
New characters showing up in Invincible Versus, and then also showing up in backups by myself and Corey Walker, and capes starting with issue 7. And it's a 3-on-3 tag fighter. It's in stores now. It's in virtual stores now. I don't want to sound old. Download those downloads, kids. But yeah, the game's doing great too. It's really awesome.
I got to imagine it's got to be fun to still be able to add toys to that toy box. I mean, you're still doing that obviously with Battle Beast, but to add a hero, like her to this, what's it like? I guess like even getting to work with Corey again, doing comic book stuff, because like obviously you and him are working a ton together on the show, but getting to have him. Getting to do that work again with him, what kind of fun is that?
Well, first I will say that Corey and I work pretty much nonstop for the last 30 years, but a lot of that stuff was just done slowly, so you didn't see it. So there seemed like there were gaps that weren't actually gaps. But yeah, so I don't know, but like getting back to like doing a superhero for the Invincible universe was a lot of fun. And it was a fun challenge, to see if these two dusty old guys can, find that magic that we had back in 2003. I think Elemental's pretty cool. I'm pretty proud of that. I will say the craziest thing was it was like the creation of Elemental to Elemental being a Funko Pop was like 8 months, maybe. It was just like, I feel like that's the fastest character creation to Funko Pop in history. Somebody should call the Guinness Book of World Records. Who knows?
That's it.
But yeah, it was just, it was a lot of fun. And then, yeah, getting to work on the origin story for her and the backup for Capes, being back in the Invincible universe, it's an embarrassment of riches just to be able to do all this stuff.
So I know, to that point, when you guys announced Terminal, one of the big things was like, oh, Robert Kirkman's returning to superheroes. You've been working in superheroes.
Counts. Shut up. Whatever.
No, but I think like I'd love to know for you as we get into Terminal, and this is a book where you are working with Joe Casey and David Finch and Art Adams and Andy Kubert and I don't think I left anyone out. Did I?
No. That's the one. Dave McCaig, Rus Wooton.
Dave McCaig. Let's do.
Yeah.
Getting to start a new universe, a superhero universe from scratch, though, has to obviously given everything that you've done and where your career is, like you've got plenty of fertile ground to play with there. What's that? How do you begin to start again? Like what does that look like for you, knowing you've got this awesome team around you as well that you're doing this with?
Well, I think job number one is not to repeat myself. I think that there's a lane that Invincible inhabits, and if Terminal were to just kind of come in and do the same thing and be the same kind of superhero universe, then, that would be bad. So trying to come up with something that's original and different and as cool as Invincible, but yet completely separate and standing alone, that was kind of job one. And, there's a real opportunity there because there's certain aspects of superhero-dom that Invincible just does not touch. And, Invincible is a very like Silver Age inspired, embrace all of the hokiest possible elements of superheroes and, put them on a pedestal and try to make them work and do cool modern takes on them. And, there's just a lot of room to kind of veer from that. And I like to say that, if Invincible is a Superman by way of like a Spider-Man way of telling storytelling with characters, Terminal is an X-Men story with horror elements and very, I'll say, depressing drama and action akin to The Walking Dead. So it's a much darker story than Invincible. It's a much more, I don't know, it's like a little bit more nuance to the characters, and we're really delving deep into the psyche of what's going on and the interplay between these characters. Just doing something that's overall got a much darker feel to it than Invincible. Although, hey, just as violent. I've got my tropes. I've got my crutches, you know. I'm not gonna, there's gonna be some violence. This isn't gonna be Super Dinosaur.
I mean, so is this a opportunity for you to how do I say this? Like what do you think a modern superhero book or universe is missing in the year of 2026 that you want to put back in?
Yeah, I mean, I always try to consider the marketplace anytime I launch a book. I've got dozens and dozens of ideas for new books that I keep, you know, picking at and working on and things. And when I decide to finally like bring one to market and actually like put it into production, I usually look at the landscape of what's coming out and go, okay, like where's the gap? Like what's happening right now? And I think that there's just not anything in comics right now that feels like these X-Men. I'm not criticizing Marvel's X-Men books or anything. Like they definitely have an audience and, good for them. But there's that like darker, edgier, like really, really like complicated, entangled universe where, there's 9 different factions working at 9 different purposes and it's very complex and it's just a billion characters doing crazy stuff. I just don't feel like there's anything that's providing that. And so Terminal, the goal is to provide that in a streamlined way so it exists in one series. But there's going to be a massive cast, multiple different factions trying to accomplish various goals, and it'll be a very like complex, layered story where every issue you get, you don't know like who the focus of the book is going to be, what the story is going to be, what's going on. And I think there's going to be some real excitement to that. The unknown of like getting a new issue and being like, all right, like where's this story going to take me?
The book opens, like you said, with a massive cast to start with, where like I feel like some other stories.
Yeah, our credits page has a checklist. Like that's what you need. You need a book that has a checklist at the beginning. Here's who's in it. Pay attention. And that's not even half the characters.
It's wild. So, okay. So even then, like, so I guess where, as readers pick this book up and they get excited for it, you mentioned, like right now, it feels like there's 2 kind of, superhuman forces of what seem like, I guess, are a couple. And like the line between good and evil, it feels like it is a bit blurred. And so is there a moral center here in the story, or is it having to like really taking in the full world and letting the reader kind of make their own?
I mean, we start with 2 teams, the Activators and the Awakened, and they're in a sense, 2 sides of the same coin. They're working at cross purposes, but they're trying to recruit the same people. And so that's kind of the main thrust of the story is one group is trying to save the world from, impending doom. And they're trying to recruit as many people as possible to, like to activate them, to give them their powers, to bring them onto their team, to make their team as strong as possible, to, maintain the existence of Earth. And, the other team is also trying to recruit people to increase their ranks. But, they have just a more sinister goal that will be revealed over time. But there is certainly a good guy team and a bad guy team. But there's a lot of gray to those aspects as well, as you would expect from a story like this. You always want to be kind of questioning, like what's actually going on. So there's a ton of reveals that'll be happening down the line as we introduce more characters and peel back the layers of, like what's going on in this universe. And it'll be a lot of fun. It's the kind of thing where like if I were to start talking about it in interviews, it would just if I just started naming characters and, well, this guy's doing this guy's doing that, and this guy's doing this, and this guy's doing that, you'd be like, I don't know what the hell is going on. But as we parse it out in the series and kind of like slowly peel the layers back and give you a sense of what's happening, I think it'll be really cool.
Again, it really feels like a scenario where you've gone out and said, what, 18 issues are done?
What I say is by July, when issue 1 comes out, we will have roughly 18 issues completed.
Yeah. So okay, so that's another.
It's a moving target, but yeah, we'll pretty much, we're pretty, we got 3 artists working, and we're getting there.
But that's another instance of issue 1 comes out.
Finish your pages, Arthur. Finish your pages.
But it's an instance where issue 1 comes out and you're already kind of so far ahead and working, in a story there. Let's step back a little bit and talk about how the team kind of comes together, the creative team, not necessarily the team in the book. You're obviously working with, for all intents and purposes, right? Like what folks would consider X-Men All-Stars, Andy Kubert, David Finch, Adams. Are there
definitively the 2 most popular X-Men writers of all time?
Absolutely.
Myself and Joe Casey. Beloved runs of Ultimate X-Men and Uncanny X-Men.
There you go. Are you approaching the story to each of those artists' strengths when they get to their part of the book?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I will go back and just say that it started with partnering with Joe Casey, because I knew that this story was going to be incredibly complex, and I do not have a lot of experience writing team books, and team books require a very unique set of skills and, certain writing muscles that you develop from doing that a lot. And Joe has done epic runs on Wildcats and Uncanny X-Men and, various other, books. I mean, he's got Blood Squad 7 coming out right now, but he's also got, is it The Intimates at Wildstorm, and, just a lot of different like team books. And so, when you're building a very complex, like woven world, like I knew that having 2 writers, from my experience working in, television and animation and things, it's nice to have like a little bit of a group think. And so, we plot stories together and, work out like long running plans, and then, like take turns doing various different aspects on scripts and things to get things moving. And, that was part 1, getting a lot of scripts done ahead of time. And, Joe and I started working on this book, I don't remember how many years ago. It was a while ago. And then, I knew I wanted to do it with multiple artists, because these kind of books always tend to have multiple artists. I mean, team books alone are just very difficult to draw. But what usually happens is, they hire one artist, and then that artist is behind schedule, and, not through any fault of their own, but just because that's how production works. And so then they just start like throwing scripts at people, and it's kind of haphazard, like who's available now and who can do this and who can do that. And they got to keep this book going. And so you end up with, a main artist, and then you have like 5 or 6 different artists that, seem to rotate in for an issue or so, like here and there. And it's just, it's not like, it's not planned, it's not like, okay, this artist is handling this and this artist is handling that. And so we wanted to do it in a way that was kind of designed from the beginning. Okay, we're going to write these issues for this artist and these issues for that artist, and this artist is kind of going to handle this kind of stuff, and this artist is going to handle that kind of stuff. And, just try to make sure that there's a roadmap of when different artists are going to come in. Andy Kubert is somebody that I've wanted to work with my entire career. And, he's absolutely brilliant. And more than anything, he is one of the few artists that, and there's others. So, I'm trying not to say anything negative, but Andy is one of the few artists that, was just absolutely killing it in the 90s and has not lost the magic of what he brought to the page. Every page he draws has the same dynamic layouts, the same dynamic storytelling, just the insane amount of like labor that he puts into the book, and the energy that he brings to a page is just amazing. And so the covers that he is doing, like it's just that it blows me away every time.
I will say he is easily one of the best cover artists of all time, I would say.
Yeah.
To me.
Of all time. Just, when you see a comic with a cover from him, just from afar, you're just like, It definitely makes you lean in. So I knew I wanted to work with him and thought he would be just great for this. And it was really cool because, we brought him in and, talked to him about the book and I said, I really want to go back to like knee style storytelling with like anchor panels and trying to, populate the page with lunchbox shots and poster images and, like do storytelling and tell a cool story. But I think that something about 90s comics has been kind of lost. Like when every page turn is some kind of memorable image that blows you away. That's I don't know. There's just something magical about that. And so I straight up told him, I was like, if we write a boring page for you, I want you to take everything on that page and cram it into the bottom left-hand corner and draw something cool. Like find the thing in the page that because writers are, trying to picture things in our head and we're looking at words on a screen. We're not necessarily suited for designing the final image. And so I wanted to empower all of the artists on this to just steamroll us writers into making cool comics because frankly that's that's what was happening in the 90s. All of the artists were empowered to draw things that they wanted to draw. I'll just sidebar here. Eric Larson, I think he said, "Can I do this?" I think he said this publicly. I don't know. But no, he would just get a plot from somebody and he'd be like, "All right, that doesn't seem like that's fun to draw. So that entire 10-page sequence is going to be 2 pages. And then I'm going to add 9 pages of Spider-Man swinging around doing cool crap and we'll figure it out." And that's why, like every now and then in the 90s, you'd read a comic where you'd get to like the last 2 pages and there would just be these absolutely jam-packed pages where all these crazy things were happening. And it was because they had run out of room adding different stuff and they were like, I don't know, I'm gonna wrap this story up. I think that stuff is cool. But
There's a page in this first issue where, and it's not like it kind of totally like stopped me a little bit in that like it's a 4-panel sequence and it's Crusher and then Imp is jumping at her and she grabs him and then like you get to the panel where she grabs him and usually that's where it just ends. And then like Andy does something where instead of like throwing him either over or whatever, throws him right into the wall. And I feel like it's a level of movement and action in a superhero book that you just kind of don't get, that it feels like something that like you can kind of only get that with someone like Andy who kind of and obviously you and Joe who kind of understand those sensibilities different than maybe something a bit more modern.
Yeah. I mean, now Joe and I are definitely writing to this kind of comic. So there isn't a lot of like, cramming, like moving things from panel to panel and
Sure.
whatever. But yeah, I mean, like knowing that you have somebody like Andy that can come in and make a moment really be a moment,
Mm-hmm.
I want a comic that you're going to read slowly just because you get hung up looking at the amazing images. Like I am an artist focused writer. Now, there is a moment in the first issue. I don't think this is spoiling anything that Andy added that is I think it's my favorite thing in the entire issue. And it's small, but there's a decapitation.
Mm.
Spoiler alert. And
You said there was gore,
Andy,
so
Andy added this thing where the character that does the decapitation then, because it's one of those decapitations where it's a swipe and then the head slowly falls off.
right.
And because the weapon is very sharp. And he added the character going and blowing to push the head off of the thing. And I was just like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I think that like having your artist like engaged and plussing up the story and this is carried forward. Andy's doing the first 5 issues before Arthur Adams and David Finch joined the party. But the same thing has happened with Arthur and like rearranging panels and adding so much stuff to the work and really just kind of going crazy. It's really great to to see a return of like those kind of like bombastic pages that, Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee and Eric Larson and Todd McFarlane and all the original Image founders, were famous for.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Silvestri and Jim Valentino, Will Spartaccio. I can't leave everyone. I got to say all the names.
There you go. I mean, so you just finished coming off Skinbreaker with David Finch. Is there anything that you learned in working with David that way that maybe you applied or will apply here in Terminal?
I think the main thing that I learned is that if you don't talk him into drawing every page poster sized, he's a much faster artist. So that might have been a miscalculation on my part. But yeah, yeah, it was. I feel like so happy with Skinbreaker. I think it's one of my proudest works. I'm very fond of what Dave and I were able to accomplish. I do feel guilty for sequestering him from the comic book industry for nearly a decade. And so moving out of Skinbreaker, he was like, I just got to get more work out there. Like I'm dying to do more pages. I'm dying to work faster. Like this is what I want to do. And I was like, let's do that. So we've got, very far flung plans for Terminal. And yeah, and we're trying to get him back out there and make up for that decades long, or, near decade long gap. But yeah, and I don't know, like, he is just a brilliant thinker when it comes to art. Like, if you haven't gone to his YouTube channel where he
God, it's a
does like
treasure
art
trove.
tutorials and
Yeah.
he draws in front of it, like just the stuff that he says is just so not being an artist myself. I mean, I'm a struggling, like, I wanted to be a comic book artist, so I'm a very bad comic book artist. Feel free to look forward to my cover for Youngblood 100. It is not great.
You know what? Rob said it's fantastic. I just spoke to him. He's like, he goes, man, I can't
I
wait.
think
It's gonna be
I haven't seen Rob's inks yet, so
okay.
I think that's because Rob knows that he can fix it. But we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to be a comic book artist, and so when I watched Dave's channel, I'm just like, if I had this 25 years ago, oh my God, maybe I'd be
You'd be
drawing my
drawing
own
Terminal.
book, and I'd be drawing my own book, and I would be putting out a tenth of the work that I put out now. So it would be horrible for me in the long run. But yeah, the thinking that goes into his work is really second to none. Like, he really kind of crafts pages in like a really complex and interesting way. And there's thought that goes into everything that he does, and it just shows on the pages.
Was there a moment in working on this where you realized that, like, this is going to be bigger than I maybe initially thought?
Yeah, I mean, bringing Arthur Adams, we'll just go ahead and move into that. Like that's when it was like, oh, okay, like this is, we've got like the top X-Men artist from the 90s, Andy Kubert, and we've got like the top X-Men artist from the aughts, in David Finch, and we've got the top, like, you know, late 80s to now. I mean, Arthur's always been popular, but it's like we've got like the top guys from different decades, and that's really exciting. Jim Lee just won't return my calls. He's too busy at DC. It's a real shame. But it is what it is. But yeah, the like, having Arthur on board is just something special. Arthur hasn't done interior work in I think it's over a decade. I looked it up at one point. And so this is going to be the first like sequential pages that you're going to get from Art Adams, and in a very, very long time. Now that I'm looking at finished issues by Arthur Adams, I'm just like, this is so insane. So insane. And he's funny, because he was like, look, I'm gonna draw what you write. So if you write the interior of a car, I'm gonna draw every single nook and cranny of the interior of a car. So just keep that in mind when you're writing. And it's like, that's true. That's true.
So it's nothing but outdoor shots for him then?
Yeah, we're just like, it's there's he's jumping in the sky. There's a moon in the background. Like, just please.
Oh, man, it totally took me out. Oh, okay. When
All three of the artists on this book are in the running for greatest comic book artist to ever live. So yeah, we knew from a very early, early on that this book was going to be special.
kind of going back to the large cast that is in this book, you also, like, not only do you have like three of the best artists, but in that you have some of the best designers, in like costume
Yes.
designers and things like that. And that, so how did you split that up? Like, is that like everyone like, okay, you can get these characters, or was it kind of a bit of a grab bag based on who felt the most connected to someone?
Well, Arthur Adams got the monsters, so like that happened very early on. There's a guy that looks kind of like a weird demon lady, and then there's a floating monster ball guy, and that seemed right. I mean, from very early on, we knew, like, some of the magic of 90s X-Men is that you had so many brilliant artists providing disparate designs of characters, like characters that were, didn't necessarily match, didn't necessarily go together. a uniformity to that universe. You know, you had characters, you know, like Banshee and Wolverine that had costumes from the 70s that were standing next to like Gambit and his like weird nonsense future costume with his trench coat cover. Like that guy takes that trench coat off. That costume is weird. Let's be honest. Much as I love Gambit, what the hell that guy's wearing? They're like, what is that, like harmonicas around? And then there's like a stained glass pattern and there's a
Like, what is that
weird.
breastplate made of? Like, is that a metal
It's
plate?
shiny.
Like,
It's shiny.
right,
I don't
it's
know.
shiny. He's like the new trend of wearing the weighted vests when you're going to walk. He's just wearing that just heavy metal
Yeah. And then
chest plate.
do they, I mean, I don't think they don't ever, not in the comic I've read. Where do you get those boots? He make those boots himself with those crazy knee pads with the cool triangle on them. No one else has these boots. These are just like just homemade Gambit boots. All right. Great stuff. Great stuff. So anyway, we're trying to mimic that magic. But yeah, it was Andy was the lead artist doing the first arc, so he handled a lot of the like major characters. And then the other thing is, as the book goes on, these designs are going to evolve. You know, like people are going to get new costumes and change things up and fresh coats of paint on things, and so I'm really excited about that. But yeah, and then Finch came on and has designed a few characters in his issues. You know, the idea is that you know the whole ensemble cast like you can't really tell who designed what. They just kind of fit together. And, you know, that was the goal, to have like different minds contributing different things so that you have like a really like broad look to the characters overall, but they do kind of fit together.
I want to circle back to the story for a second in that, you know, obviously, you know, there's a bit of an X-Men feel to this book, and in the release and in the solicit, there's a line. There's something about like, you know, the idea of unlocking genetic code and giving up, you know, everything you kind of thought you knew about yourself feels like it. Obviously, you know, someone who is reading this, oh, I can see where that's going, but it also feels very much like you kind of taking that idea to the next level. What are you looking and hoping to explore with that concept that makes it different, but then also that maybe you feel elevates it to?
I mean, at the core,
What
we're
we're
just trying to find a cool way into why people are recruited and who's recruited. And the idea is that, you know, there's like dormant genetic code that's within us, and like how that got there and why it's there is, you know, part of the storyline to be revealed. But you know, the idea that anybody on Earth can be somebody special and not know it is something that I think is really, you know, like frequently appearing in comics, you know, like that whole like, you know, the potential for a hero's journey story and you know, leaving this small world and entering a larger world is very exciting. But I like the mysteries of like the origins of humanity itself. You know, there's a lot of cool conspiracy theories about like, you know, with the gap in evolution and the missing link and, you know, how we evolved from, you know, ape-like creatures into what we are now. And, you know, we'll definitely be delving into that in a fun, like superhero kind of way. So, yeah. It'll be a lot of fun.
You're doing blind bags for this one.
Gotta
I think
do
anyone,
blind bags. Gotta do
anyone,
blind
but
bags. We're the
anyone
only ones
who-
that do blind bags right.
that's what I was
If
going to say.
if we let any other company do blind bags, they're just going to ruin it.
You have distilled it down, perfected the science to make a fun, engaging blind bag program. I got to imagine that's like trying to come up with that is not only probably hard and frustrating because, you know, there are other people who are screwing it up for everyone else, but also really rewarding because you can see it in real time when you know you've got it right. Talk to me about putting this one together versus, you know, the other ones that you've done in the past and what you're excited about this one in particular.
Well, I think the whole idea with Battle Beast, with Mask, with Terminal is that the blind bag has to offer something special and unexpected. One of the things that is just, I don't know, like I think really made the Battle Beast thing work is when you opened the blind bag and you got a reprint of Marvel Team Up 14 with Spider-Man and Invincible teaming up, it was like, this is impossible. How is this possible? This doesn't make any sense. Like, does not compute. And so, you know, that's kind of the thing that we're trying to accomplish with all of these blind bags. You know, there's going to be books in the bag that aren't the book you bought. And that's crazy. That's crazy. So you'll buy number one's blind bag, and you'll open the bag and it will be something that is not terminal number one. What that will be remains to be revealed, but I'm very excited that that we'll be continuing that forward. There's things in the mask blind bag that are not mask number one. That is key. There's cool rare variant covers and all kinds of different things that you can get out of the bag, but those special magic comics that you don't expect to exist, that to me is the secret sauce of the blind bag. And blind bags have their detractors, and they are becoming more prevalent and frequent, but I don't know, when I saw videos of packed comic shops with people opening Battle Beast blind bags and everyone celebrating as a group when they got various things out of the blind bags, and I feel like that is an experience within comic shops that you can only get from comic shops. No one is opening product in a Target and having other people in the Target cheer and go, you got the lavender lipstick, yay! There's nothing like that anywhere else. No one's going to a GameStop and opening their video games in front of people and having people congratulate them. So I don't know. I just think it's a fun, cool experience that people can have in a comic shop that we want to maintain. And it is a tremendous amount of work that thankfully I don't have to do much of. The team at Skybound basically breaking their backs to make these blind bags work. But that's because we all love comics and we all love comic shops, and it's just an exciting and fun thing to do. So yeah, we enjoy it, and we'll hopefully be doing more of it unless Mask and Terminal end up being a disaster, and then we'll never do blind bags again, and we'll just pretend we never did them. But no, it's a lot of fun, and I hope to be doing more of that stuff.
I think one of the things that, for me as like a collector and someone who like loves to kind of get involved in this type of stuff, and when going to a shop, the fact that like people are learning what's in the bags that day, and then like not like someone getting something different than the other person that got a different bag, and not knowing what else is possible in there, that's what makes them fun. When like, oh, you can get maybe this or that, and it's just like, just different versions of a variant or whatever. Like, sure, do I want a shinier one? Yeah. Do I hope to get it? But like not knowing at all what's in there, and then knowing that there's different levels of stuff, that's where the magic happens. So
yeah, I mean, it's one thing to make something special by rarity, and I think that's cool. And there is that in our blind bags. There's 1 in 100 covers and 1 in 500 covers that you have you open 500 bags, you have a chance to get one of those. Like there's some rarity to things, but I think having that extra product in it that is unexpected just takes it up to that next level. And the cost involved and labor involved in doing that is so much that it seems impossible for any other company to mimic. So I love that.
You've got it on lock. I want to talk a little bit.
They're like, what you're doing makes no business sense. We will never copy that. All right.
That's it. You're in a safe spot. That's it.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the kind of industry at large, in a sense, where it feels like creators are taking bigger swings, or bigger swings outside of really like main big two worlds of stuff, right? Like I think just Image alone in the last couple of months with books, you've got books like Dork and White Sky and Red Roots and a whole list of stuff just even recently. Feels like a really fun time to be in comics. And then now, you obviously you've had Battle Beast, but you've got Terminal now coming out, and also Skinbreaker. What do you feel like is drawing everyone into this stuff, but then also at the same time, like we're getting this almost embarrassment of riches of really cool, good, independent ideas hitting the market right now?
To be honest, I wish I knew exactly what was happening so that I could try to like replicate it or help maintain it, because it is a really great, I think it's a perfect storm of a lot of different things happening. I think there is obviously a lot of excitement around Absolute Batman that's bringing a lot of people into stores. I've publicly, said that, Absolute Batman is bringing people into stores that are buying a Batman comic and a bunch of Image comics and leaving. That seems to be happening. I think that the Invincible show is driving people into stores. I think that the Energon universe is driving people into stores. These are fan bases that exist that may not be regular direct market comic shop readers. Like there are people that just love Transformers and just love G.I. Joe and just love the Invincible show that are like, let's try this stuff out. Let's check this out. And so I think it's you say it's a mishmash of all kinds of different things happening all at once. And it's like you said, it's at a time where we just happen to have a murderer's row of awesome books launching at Image Comics, between Dork and White Sky and, Red Roots and all the books that I'm forgetting, Corpse Knight.
Yep.
What's that other one? There's other, go take it over, Jim. What are our
Fireborn, right?
Fireborn, that's the one I was trying to think of.
Like today, I think every issue, the first 8 issues of Assorted Crisis Events have now been like reprinted and are now in stores. Like I said, like there is just book after book seems to be hitting with a new
Exquisite
audience.
Corpses is doing
Exquisite
really
Corpses.
well. Like there's just so many books that are really launching.
But I think also you're also seeing books hit bigger like issue numbers, right? Radiant Black's about to hit issue 50 coming up. Department of Truth is like, that's a train that is still rolling.
Todd and I talk about how the issue numbers at Image are higher than issue numbers at Marvel and DC and how absolutely insane that is.
Because at least you just had I Hate Fairyland just hit 50, and like that's one that Scotty's been working on, and like that. Like, I feel like that's a whole other thing in and of itself where, like, it's not just, these are books that are showing and proving that they can go the distance because there's an audience there and they're being served and fed. And so like, it's fun.
Yeah. No, it's really great. And, just the sales of all of these books is really blowing me away. Like having, had the inside track on everything that's going on at Image for decades now and seeing the sales figures that these guys are enjoying is just staggering. Like Image had its boom period in 2012 where, Saga and Fatale and, Wicked and Divine and all those books were launching, and all of the books launching now are selling 3, 4, 5 times what those books were selling when they were launching. And it's really kind of crazy. It's just an absolute crazy period in comics.
All right, we're gonna land the plane on this one. I've got 2 more questions for you, terminal-ish related. You have said that readers have no idea what they're in for this book. We obviously illuminated a little bit of that.
Mostly because I'm being vague in interviews.
This is probably the most in-depth insight, vagueness
True.
included for it. But but give me the version of that you can say. What is the thing that is going to catch people completely off guard that you can say?
I mean, it's a very complex story with high stakes. I think that, it's called Terminal for a reason. Part of the recruitment aspect of this is that they are trying to assemble the strongest teams possible. And that means that characters are going to be dying, almost nonstop. So look forward to that. But yeah, I mean, it's, there's peril and world-threatening events and, 2 teams of great characters that absolutely hate each other.
A year from now, when people are talking about Terminal, what do you hope they're saying?
I mean, the same with every series that I do. I want them to be like, I had no idea that the story was going here after reading issue 1. I love that aspect of comic book storytelling where, month to month, you kind of move the goalposts a little bit. And then you compare like issue 12 to issue 1, and it's like, oh my God, I had no idea they were going there. So that's definitely something that I'm hoping for. And yeah, and just to be, it'll be a more clear picture of like how long the roadmap ahead of us is too. So
love it. Terminal number 1 in stores July 22nd. FOC final order cutoff May 25th. So go tell your comic book shop how many. You know the rule here on the show. You need at least 3 copies. One for you to read immediately when you get home, 1 to put in another room so you can read it again, and then another 1 to give to a friend, because that's how this works. I don't make the rules. You have to at least order 3 copies. So you know the deal. Again, to wrap this up,
Jim, you can't bring a comic from one room to the other room.
No, look, if I'm reading it in my living room, and look, this first issue is a chunky one, right? Like, look, I'm gonna read the whole thing cover to cover, but it's one of those things where I'm reading in my living room and I may put it down, and then I need one on my bedside table. What if I want to read it again? I'm not going downstairs. I want it right there, right next to me, ready to go before bed. That's why I need the second. That's why I need the second copy, and then obviously the third to give to someone. Do you like the show? You like what you heard? Leave a rating, leave a review on iTunes, leave a review on Spotify, leave a comment. If you're watching
leave
this
a positive review. A positive review.
Yeah, that's it.
5 stars. What are you doing?
I have been able to maintain a 5-star rating, and very proud of that. We have a great community here of people who really love this show. Couldn't do it without them. Love it. Robert, man, thank you so much. I know you've been all over the place doing a bunch of interviews, getting the interview real mad at you sometimes. So I appreciate you taking the time to just chat some comics here, and we'll catch you next time.
I'm sorry I couldn't make you mad at me during this interview.